Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 327. Today we're going to talk about Golem Arcana. Now this is a two-player tactical miniatures game, new release. It came out at Gen Con in large quantities, was a Kickstarter last year. Now the trick with this game is it has a supplemental app that you can use on your phone, your tablet, and that app is actually going to control a lot of the special abilities and pretty much all the whole game. And now the game takes place out here on the board. You move your figures around, all that stuff. But what the app does is it adds a whole sort of layer of special abilities that you can sort of deck build with your army. So it's got an army builder, you can add different units, and you can sort of outfit those units with different drivers or different pilots almost, because like the name Golem Arcana, basically each of the miniatures in here is driven by kind of a regular old guy, and these are these big automated things that are just, roaming around and crushing everything, and that's what does a lot of your combat. So the first thing to note here are the miniature figures. They come pre-painted and in my opinion are excellently done. They're very distinctive, even down to the different pilots and knights that are driving these automated golems. In the box you get 6 different golems, 3 per team. And each golem figure has a matching card that goes with it. You can see some of the different special abilities, the golem's hit points, and so on. Now what players are going to be doing is they're going to take this giant stylus, which has a Bluetooth connection to your iPad or your phone, and you'll be touching it to either an area on the card or possibly on the base of the different units on the board. And then if you want to move it, for example, you can tap one of the grid spaces and then the app will tell you if you can move there. If you've got a movement speed and enough range to get there, it'll consider all of the terrain that's out on the board. Because each scenario comes with a pre-configured map. You can see here there's 6 tiles that come with this game. They are double-sided. So for example here, if you wanted the fire ram to move, you can go ahead and touch the walk action on its card, and you can see this will cost you 2 action points, and this will give him up to 3 movement points that he can spend. If you wanted to use the fire ram's blast ability, you could touch this area here. You can see it also costs 2 action points. It gives you its percentage to hit, the amount of damage it does, and its range. If you flip the card over, it's going to give you some more details on the special abilities, so you just don't have to look at a bunch of numbers all the time. You can flip the card over and it gives you more of a thematic sense of what's going on. It kind of draws you into the action a little bit more. So mechanically at its core, you're just going to be using this stylus. You're going to get a turn. You're going to get 6 action points on your turn. So you can saw the walk and the blast, they each takes 2 action points. You get those action points across the entirety of your team. Now if you choose to pass, you have those action points left over, and those will actually convert to mana. Now as you play more and more of these regular scenarios beyond the first couple of tutorials, you'll start to find that mana is actually very important. So you'll get a certain amount of mana in the game, and there also will be mana that you generated by passing, and then there may be mana wells out on the map that you can sit and absorb mana from. And this is really where the game kind of takes on an interesting twist. So if we take a look here, I can tap on the Wing Preserver. It's going to bring up all of his special abilities. And if you look at the lower right hand side there of the pop-up, I can press both buttons on the stylus. I can give a little bit more information. It's going to show me his base armor, his dodge, all kinds of stuff like that. So I can toggle through the different abilities now. I can fly, I can do Stumbling Quake, Lightning Bolt, all kinds of cool stuff. So let's go ahead and just do move. And I've got walk there. And if you look there, you can see all of the highlighted regions that I can move to. One of those is going to be the little mana well. So I can tap that spot here on the board, and then I can click the button to confirm the walk. Then I take and physically move the piece to that location. Now you can see in the upper left hand corner, I've got 4 action points left. Well, there's a couple other things that I can do as well. If I want to push the menu item, I can hit the ancient ones up here. And these are all of the ancient ones that I've added to my army or my deck of cards. And I can scroll through these, and these are going to give me different special abilities. You've got some different ones that you can select. This one, for example, enemy knights in this region cannot use their abilities. If a golem has more than 1 knight, a random knight will not be able to do their special abilities. To give you a good impression of how the game works, and how I've sort of evolved over the several plays is the first 2 times I played the game, and granted those were through the first 2 tutorials, I kind of felt like the game was a little bit glorified joystick, where I'm doing everything on the app, I'm kind of toggling through things and then selecting different abilities that I can do and say, okay, so I can do this lightning bolt, what's the range on it? Okay, it shows that this guy's in range. I click on the guy and it goes, oh no, hey, there's a line of sight being blocked because there's a mountain there. You go, oh, I didn't see the mountain, and then you kind of work it out. And that's kind of interesting a little bit, I mean, just from a purely technical perspective. But then once I kind of advance into choosing some of the various scenarios that are available in the game, then it becomes a lot more interesting, because then you outfit each of the golems with a unique knight or pilot. And there's several of these, and these will give them different special abilities, different buffs, different one-time shots that you can do, in the given scenario. And then also, like the ancient ones that I showed you there on the app, those are sort of special global abilities that you may have for the army. And so the whole tension of, okay, do I go and activate and spend all my action points here? Do I try to generate some mana, kind of play defense a little bit, maybe turtle a little bit, go and control this mana well, and then I've got, I can dump out a big blast or something on somebody? That really becomes a big part of the game. So if we take a closer look at the iPad interface, you can see here you've got, your account. You're going to make an online account that you want to be able to connect to and, save your armies and all that kind of good stuff online. You can set up a stylus manager. You can see this is the thing where I connect the stylus. You can connect 2 styluses, that way each player has a stylus, but it's not a big deal to pass it back and forth. And then of course you've got your army builder. I'll just show you a little bit of that. So here's my Gudana 500-point army. And for example, here is the Sand Lion. So we'll go into the Sand Lion there. And here you can see the golem here. So you can select from, these are all of the golems in this particular faction. Here I've selected the Sand Lion. Now I can equip the Sand Lion or outfit the Sand Lion with a knight. And these are obviously going to cost different amounts of points. So we've got Aziz Zara at the top there. We can select this one. This has an overheat ability. Or we've got Jal Harava, 500 blows is his special ability there. We can see this on activation. This Knight's Golem, next successful attack, will lose 1 cooldown, but if it misses, it will instead gain 1 additional cooldown. And some of the special abilities, they're on a cooldown, so you've got to wait for them to regenerate, which is one of the things that the app does for you. Now, if we go back out to the main screen of the army, you can see we've got the 2 ancient ones. We've got the Trapper and the Prince. So if we go and take a look at the Prince there, we can see this one has, for this round, all allied golems attacks get 10 extra damage and their range attack cooldowns are decreased by 2. So this is kind of like you're gonna, go all in a little bit. And so you can see over here on the left, there's a bunch of different ancient ones that you can add to your army. Finally, let's go back out to the main screen, and then we're going to go into play. And you can see here there's different scenarios of 500, 1,000, 2,000, and 3,000 point army. You've got the first 2 tutorials there. You're going to be able to make use of the 6 figures that come with the base set. You've got this extra thing here, Battle of Monty's Hall. This says uses tile set 2, so there's a little pack of tiles above and beyond the 6 that you start with that you can use. And there's a bunch of other cool little 2-player scenarios. So you get a fair little bit of scenarios and things that you can play around with. Some of these will want you controlling, different spots on the board, sort of like a domination type scenario. What you really want to get into, though, are these 1,000-point scenarios, which you can't really build with the base set. And one thing that's interesting here, that was here, that's no longer here, they had sort of a timed event that you could do. And this is a scenario that when you played the outcome of it, the results would be uploaded online. Now, you don't have to always toggle through the menu, as it were, on the iPad. For example, if you wanted to use the Knight's ability on the Jeweled Harpy, you could go and click on the little helmet here, and that will activate and show you what your Knight's special ability, and then you can go ahead and commit to do that action. If you wanted to bring up the ancient ones, or even kind of bounce around the menus, each player has control cards that allow them to click and get around, so you're not having to always push the button on the stylus and then navigate the menus that way. On the back side of these control cards, there's even input for entering dice rolls. So if you really wanted to just roll the percentile dice, then you could go ahead and roll those dice and then input the information there. And so when you do this, it's actually kind of neat. I didn't really think I would use that, but I just kind of did it just to see how it worked. And like I said before, as you kind of play the game a little bit, it kind of takes you out of the app a little bit more, and you spend more time out here looking at the cards, looking at the figures, and then you learn the special abilities. So you're really just looking at the app to see the outcome, and it shows like some little explosion or firework kind of special effect. So that's pretty cool. But I would say the definite first impression is like, okay, I feel like this is just a video game and not a board game at all, because it just feels like a glorified joystick. Like I'm pulling the A button is this figure and the B button is the lion and all that stuff. And that's what it really kind of feels like. But as you play it and keep going with it, it really starts to be sort of just like an enhancement or an augmentation the app is on the outside world. It's just basically a quick rules reference. You're like, okay, I did this ability. Oh, I can't get that because it's out of range and there's a line of sight. And it prevents you from actually making rules mistakes, where if you were to take this miniatures game and take some of these different special abilities, like some of them are buffs and things that last more turns, or one of them like will be, I'm going to set this area on fire and this particular region is going to generate 10 fire damage per round for the next 2 or 3 rounds, then you don't have to be like, oh, we forgot to add the fire damage that round. Oh well, they have to carry that for you. Doesn't matter. And so it makes it very intuitive and interesting to play in that way. So for example, here you've got sort of a scenario. You can see here it is the Durrani player's turn. They've got the Wing Harpy selected there. And there you can see the red and yellow pylon areas, or areas we're trying to control. You've got the Dune Viper. He is actually on a mana pool, but it's the yellow player's turn. So what we're going to do, we've got the Wing Preserver. We've already moved him up. And so you can easily see, I'm just clicking on the different cards and bouncing around and selecting which units, seeing what's available. Maybe I can say, oh, well, let's have him walk. So I selected the walk for the fire ram. I can see where he can get to. Okay, he could get to the mana well, he could get to the control area. But let's go ahead and do an attack for the Wing Preserver. So I've selected him. He's about to walk into here. Let's see if I can lightning bolt this guy. Yep. So it's within range. I've got enough action points to do. So I'm going to lightning bolt, and I'm going to go ahead and just tap either the golem's base or the card. I'll go ahead and just tap his base. So I've selected him. I'll hit the confirm here, and then we can see there it's going to roll. It's going to give me a 69. So it's got the 15 dodge, which is ignored, and it wasn't enough because you need a 75 percentile to hit that. So I've still got 3 action points, but one thing you can notice here, if I try to do the lightning again, it actually doubles, because you can't just sit there and pound the other guy with all of your points there. So I hope that gave you some sense of the game a little bit. It's very easy to sort of tab around and select different cards and different creatures and figure out what they're going to do, and test out the special abilities and things like that. So what do I think of the game? Well, I have a lot of thoughts on the game. First thing let's tackle is the price point. Now, you only get 6 miniatures in the box, and it is a little bit more expensive than your traditional board game. If you were to get like an Eldritch Horror, or some Euro game or something, this is going to be a lot steeper than you normally will pay. But I've talked to some folks. Now, I'm not into the big miniatures skirmish games like Warhammer 40K and War Machine or anything, but I've talked to some people that are. And they said that this is a pretty good price. They're pre-painted, they're high quality. I think they're pretty good quality myself. I think they look fantastic actually. But I'm not really like an expert as far as miniatures go. But I think they look amazing, honestly. So I think you're getting a good bang for your buck here. And like I showed you, you've got some different scenarios that you can try. The one caveat I would say is I feel like you really want a 1,000-point army. With the way it's set up here, you can really only make a 500-point army, and it's only 3 figures on each side. And yeah, you can trick it out with the different special abilities, but to get the game really to shine and really get to where it wants to be, I think you really need to set up larger armies. And that's where the app's really going to shine even more, because as things kind of become sort of cumbersome, or they might become cumbersome, the app's going to handle a lot of that burden for you. So as you learn the different knights and special abilities that you have, you can quickly move around. As you've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 figures on a side, that's going to be friggin' awesome. So my caveat is I think it's reasonably priced, but I do think you need to go and grab some of the special sets that you can get afterwards. I think they have a couple of sets that will augment these particular armies. There's like one huge, giant, just insane figure, and I think that's like 50 or 60 bucks. I think the MSRP is higher, but I've seen it for cheaper than that. I mean, that looks amazing. But I say if you really want to get into the game, I feel like I've hit a little bit of a wall with this because I've played it probably about 6 times after going through the tutorials a few times. But I kind of feel like, yeah, I want to have a 1,000-point army so I can participate in some of these other larger quests and different, living world scenarios, I guess they call them. And that's where the data is uploaded back to the server, and that will generate like more stuff for you to do. And that's one thing that's really interesting about the game is they have this stuff where it's like, okay, if you move into a certain like location or something, you maybe will encounter like an NPC and have like a little hidden information quest that you have to complete that give you some more victory points or something like that. Because most of the time it's like you get victory points for wiping out the guy or controlling different locations, but those kind of things can pop up. I mean, how do you really do that? You know, at least in the way that they do it without the app. So I think it's 100% necessary. And so I would say, again, that it definitely feels like you have this joystick control thing where, you know, the lion is the A button and the jeweled harpy is the B button. But as you sort of draw out of it, then it becomes more and more interesting, and you're not so locked into the app. Everything's taking place. You're talking about it, and talking about the events that happen. You're not just going, oh, that does this does that. So that basically my point is I think it's really intriguing, and it's not. They've really investigated the technology. I think there's a lot more they can do with it, with this whole, the questing and the downloading new quests and different things that will happen and different scenarios that will happen based on what people do. That's really cool. I mean, that's awesome. And, but you got to make a little bit of an investment there. So if this looks interesting to you all, I mean, you can just get the base set and try it out, but you're going to hit a wall, I think, and it's not going to be 100% satisfying. So I would say go a little bit above and beyond that, which I think is reasonable, because looking at the price of other miniatures games and the amount of technology and everything involved here, I think it's reasonable to expect that this is a good intro. If you don't like it, obviously you can get rid of it, but then I think this is a good stepping stone to sort of graduate you into what looks like it's going to be a pretty awesome world. So anyway, yeah, Golem Arcana, definitely take a look at it. And I hope the way I kind of did this was easy enough to kind of parse and get a good sense, because it was kind of tricky, because it's one thing when the app's sitting there, but then kind of filming that and all, it's kind of weird. So anyway, thanks. Take a look at it.